Have you ever wondered if God hears your prayers? I believe this is a very common question for Christians. I certainly have wondered sometimes if God heard my prayers. And even in my journals or in reality, I've shouted at God, saying, God, God, where are you? Do you hear me? Last week, my sermon was about Abraham and Sarah and the miracle birth of Isaac, the child called laughter. In their case, God heard their prayers and fulfilled the promise that God had made to have a covenant with Abraham, that they would be the parents of many generations, generations that would know the one true God. But guess what? Before the covenant with Abraham and Sarah came true, before their prayers came to be fulfilled in the birth of Isaac, God made another covenant, a covenant with Hagar, the Egyptian slave woman. The story unfolds some 14 years before the birth of Isaac. In Genesis chapter 16, we read about Hagar, the slave of Sarah. Sarah, discouraged by her inability to have children, gives Hagar to Abraham in a practice not uncommon for that time, and Hagar became pregnant. The text says that Hagar looked with contempt upon Sarah. I did some research on that word in my Hebrew English dictionary. I was curious what it really meant. And one of the translations of that word is dried up or parched. So perhaps Hagar looked upon Sarah as the one being dried up and was joyful about having a child. And Sarah was angry and jealous. And I wonder, who's at fault for what happens next? For as the story unfolds, there are some dramatic twists and turns. Sarah, enraged at what she feels is attitude coming from Hagar, rails at Abraham and tells him in so many words, I'm going to treat you the way Hagar is treating me. And Abraham, perhaps trying to get out of the middle of this tussle going on in the middle of the women's tent, says, Sarah, take her back. Do whatever you want with her. Sarah, as the text says, treats her harshly, and Hagar, pregnant with Abraham's child, runs away into the wilderness. There, God finds Hagar. And in a scene that is parallel to the covenant God made with Abraham and Sarah, God makes a covenant with Hagar, a black, Egyptian, enslaved woman. God says he will multiply her offspring and names her yet-to-be-born child Ishmael, which means God listens or God hears. And Hagar replies to God, calling him El Roi, the God who sees. In a delightful twist and play upon words, Hagar explains, I have seen the one who sees me. Perhaps some of you remember the blockbuster movie Avatar that came out a couple of years ago, where humans interact with an alien species on a distant planet. A technology is developed whereby humans can actually inhabit the bodies of the local aliens, learn their speech, and eventually they ally with them to help save their planet from destruction. The common greeting among the people on that planet is, I see you, which is much more than just physical seeing. It means, I know you, I commune with you, I deeply perceive who you are. Hagar's affirmation that she has seen God, even as God has seen her, is a remarkable way that those who wrote these accounts chose to remember this unusual event. And as this chapter ends, Hagar returns to the camp, and Ishmael is born. Last week we picked up with chapter 18 and then skipped to chapter 21 as we heard the story of the three visitors who came to visit Abraham and Sarah and told Sarah that she would indeed have a child. Sarah conceived, and Isaac, the son of laughter, was born, and for a moment there was lightness and joy. But as for Hagar, her story unfolds in an almost tragic way. Sarah sees her baby, Isaac, playing, and the Hebrew word is also translated as laughing, with Ishmael, and demands that Hagar and her son be cast out. The text says Abraham was very distressed, and the Hebrew word implies that he saw this as an evil thing, a terrible thing. Abraham's quandary is solved, however, when God directs him to let Hagar go. He gives her some food and a skin of water, and Hagar and Ishmael leave the camp.